All right. I'm gonna do a little talking first.
But I said to her,
And appreciating first. And then we're going to bring up some leaders in the field up here on these four chairs. But we know this room is filled with leaders in the field. It's the school mindfulness champion dinner. And I am recording it. I don't know how well it will work with the dimmed lights. Wonderful ambiance, but I didn't think ahead to how it would record. So we might not use the recording for anything, but potentially it will be included in our April online learning summit. There you go. There you go. But I wanted to start with just sharing. Last year we had like a little steering committee meeting, and some people from the conference, we invited everybody to attend, and we got feedback. And then in the summer, we used that feedback at our annual board meeting to kind of, steer the coalition for the next year and really decide where we best put our time and energy. So I wanted to start by just sharing where our mission is right now. We started a year and a half ago. So we've, yes, what? Yay! A year and a half, look at it. This is amazing.
I just want to say thank you to Tracy, and I think we all should.
Thank you.
We were saying just how collaborative this organization feels, so much more so than others. Yeah, and so thank you about it.
Yes, and we'll talk more about that. I love that word collaboration because that is, we want to pick the one word to be community collaboration. Some form of those is the heart. It's always trying to align with that and having integrity with that. So I had the idea with the help of Barnaby Spring here. I initially had a wonderful little idea of putting on a conference for this Teacher Institute Day. My husband, Gary, over there, he's the part, I was going to say, yes. So I've lived vicariously through him. Like I first was an engineer, and then I'm like, why am I not a teacher? But then we had kids and stuff, so I just lived vicariously through him, and I had lots of access to student groups to teach yoga and mindfulness too, and it was lots of fun. But I really was so passionate about mindfulness. I had followed. I always call it the movement, but I love how Barnaby says it's an emergence of mindfulness in schools. But so I was kind of looking for where to put my passion and efforts and kind of align what I did for a living with what I was most passionate about. So we really, at our heart, we want to be a joining forces organization. And Barnaby convinced me I was the perfect person. Like I'm neutral, I'm a parent, so I'm not already overworked, and as an educator, I know there's not any extra time. And then the educator on top of them wanting to do the extra things to bring mindfulness into their school and district. And then all the wonderful nonprofit organizations out there, like they have small staffs, like there's just not extra time to get anything like this going as well. So I trusted the feeling that I had in my heart, and the timing was right. And what I want to just say is, like, as a coalition, like it's like a PTO that you're already a member, and that it's just any level of involvement that you want to have, we so appreciate. And wherever it's at, like you don't have to feel guilty that you're not at a higher level. I know we have like some board members, so I'm like, be a board member, and then they feel kind of probably a little guilty that they're not able to help quite as much as they had hoped, because life happens and we get busy with the school year and such. So I want everybody to know that I appreciate wherever you are in your involvement. But I just want to go through the 3 pillars we have in our mission right now and where we're at, and then at the end of the evening get some feedback on where maybe that we could put some of our time and energy moving forward with that. So trainings is one of the first pillars. Trainings, resources, and mentoring. And the trainings, basically, we want to help promote all the wonderful trainings out there already and get those, as many educators knowing about those as possible, because we know it's that just doing a mindful moment and not having the deeper training to do more, we want to help make that happen more for educators. And then we don't want to, we're not looking to recreate the wheel with things that are already out there. So I often go and look on different people's websites and see the new things that are coming out, maybe new webinar offerings and such like that. Because we feel like as a neutral joining forces organization, we don't want to take away from what is already out there, but maybe look for things that maybe haven't been quite done. Like one of the things we did this year, one of our board members is a treasurer on a special education organization, and there was an opportunity to apply for an administrator academy grant to design one. So in Illinois, that's the title they give Administrator Academy to, just to keep up your certification to be a principal and such. So we applied to do it. We designed one with the intention of, there's 6-hour trainings that we could train them and then help them basically find all of the wonderful organization out there and kind of mentor them in what their unique environment is of their school, and maybe direct them to some resources to help them and other mentors that can help them move and grow mindfulness in their district. So that was just one example. And then the big dream would be if we have funding and it's not mainly just me behind the scenes, working with Toby and other board members on designing these things, to then have our state chapter coordinators be helping other states do similar projects, so that we're collaborating. Hey, we have this Administrator Academy in Illinois, like how is the system set up in your state? How can we get, work together and create partnerships in your state? So that is a bigger goal. But let me move to the next one, with resources being another pillar. And so one thing I found when I was helping our own kids' school district, I was researching organizations to help them be more proactive with mental health after, this was 2 years ago, that there was an 8th grader and a 9th grader who died by suicide in the same year, and I had an 8th grader at the time. So that really struck me, and I asked how proactive they were being. They said that they obviously were definitely tired of putting out fires, so I helped them find resources. I'm like, how about try this? How about pilot this in a school? And they were wonderful. They piloted Inner Explorer in, it was several schools within the district, and then one of the schools had a mindfulness committee, so I helped them find some more resources. But one thing I thought of at the time was like, oh, it would be so great if there was kind of, I call it a one-stop shop, but a website where, and we wouldn't, so basically what we do for resources, we have a resource web page, and it's not something like Castle where they're really extensively researched, but kind of create a starting spot for educators to start learning more about different mindfulness organizations. And there's a lot of I'm finding a lot of smaller ones, like our Missouri chapter coordinator created a little curriculum, Balanced Ed, and get some of the smaller ones being known about. So obviously our resource fair today, incorporating that into the conference, is a great way to get them knowing more about resources. Everything kind of becomes about resources, like our book, so many elements, but we also wanted to include within it, each chapter, favorite go-to practices, which programs or what they're using, so that educators who read the book can learn about resources. And then mentoring, the last pillar. Right now we call it mentoring, but maybe a better term would be community for it. So the heart of our mission, we knew obviously just a conference once a year. That's not how mindfulness works. You don't just do a training and that's all you need. I mean, it's the daily practice, the community. So we thought that definitely needed to be the heart of our mission. And we went back and forth on what to call them, because it feels just like communities of practices, and a lot of other organizations do that as well. But we thought, our title is coalition, like chapter just seemed like, we kind of agreed that would be the word for it. So the big dream would be to have a state chapter in each U.S. state, and then we've already had countries reaching out to us. So I think it's in Ontario they have a chapter. Scotland we have a chapter. I had someone reach out to me from Australia recently. So I don't know. I can't do it all right now. I'm like, let's start the chapter. Yes. So I mean that's where I get a little overwhelmed at first, because I'm busy doing all these other things, and then excited people call me up wanting to start chapters, but there's just time and energy involved with that and getting them. So right now we're at where we try to have a monthly, we just call it a chapter organizational meeting. You don't necessarily have to be a coordinator in any state. That kind of scares educators. I don't have time to be the coordinator. So we're basically helping people who want to facilitate communities of practice in their area. And then hopefully I can start connecting if we have a facilitator in Austin and then a facilitator in Dallas, and then start connecting them, and eventually someone's like, okay, I'll take the lead of the state. And right now I'm also the Illinois chapter coordinator, and so fun, we have 5 local chapters this year. So very, very proud about that. And I want, can anybody who facilitates meetings in Illinois stand up?
All right.
Yes. Thank you. And so obviously we're starting small. Some of the first meetings had 2 to 3 people or 5 to 10 people. So, but this is where we're starting, and I got to see almost everybody's first meeting, and that was so special. But so right now we have 18 states currently represented with chapters. We have a New England chapter that includes 6 states right now, but potentially we'll have that break apart, because even today someone came up to me and said, I'm moving to Maine and I would love to start a chapter there. Someone came up to me about Georgia. I've recently had someone from New Mexico and Florida. So yes. So basically in the spring last year, the spring and summer and fall, I have more time to help mentor those people who want to facilitate meetings, which basically are just, you get together, you do different mindfulness practices together, you share what's happening in your school, you share resources. It really can take any shape. We don't have any strict rules. I know you mentored me on how you do yours in Michigan, and that helped us with helping other people, the different states do it. But, so I want next to have, so the conference combines, we try to have the conference each year combine those 3 things, the trainings, the resources, and the mentoring. And I think that's how our conference really stands out, that we kind of made the choice right away, and it was kind of due to we didn't have any money, but that we didn't need a big keynote, like author expert to come in and spend money on that. We wanted ours to get into the nitty-gritty sessions of what exactly is happening in your school, and how are you making it happen, and what happens when this, and how are you getting funding, and all those questions that, like the next step, once you have taken your resiliency training and learned about ACEs and gotten that first intro to mindfulness, like what next then? But so the next people I want to have stand up are the board members who are here. All the board members stand up. And then I want, so stand up also if you're in another state. I know Sheila, so South Dakota, stand up Sheila. Any other state chapter coordinators? Where's Julia? Are you? Virginia. So yes, so very excited to have. That was kind of what I initially had in mind for the school champion dinner. I think eventually as we grow to have the different coordinators be up here and be sharing what is happening in their states. But I know now I don't want to put pressure on anybody like we're just starting, we're just growing. But it'd be really cool because I think when you're learning what's happening in other locations, how empowering that could be and how it increases the momentum of what we all can do. Let's see, I had a few more things to cover. The board. Actually, that was kind of all I wanted to cover. I did want to cover also that Toby will be on with us next year. I really want to invite Toby to be on as long as she wants as president, but we have no pressure here. But yeah, so it's so professional to say we're making this up as we go in the best way of what we feel is best for our organization. But I want to so let that sink in. We're going to have Toby lead some dive deeper questions with thought leaders here. I want to invite up, let's actually take a little moment. I see Barnaby over there preparing for coming up. So let's put our feet on the floor and just sit with the appreciation we feel for everyone in this room. Our shared why for being here. Appreciation for all of the presenters, volunteers. And just one final nice big breath in together as a community. And an exhale and a smile. So at the very end, I want to get some feedback and be handing around this talking stick and just kind of talk like, what should we be talking about? Like for next conference, like how did like today, what we did a little bit different than last year for today. Like how we did lunches and it was at the same time as sessions, like did we like that? Did we not like that? All that kind of fun stuff we'll maybe do at the end if you want to stay. And also feel free, I know it's a super long day, so at any point, your body, listen to your body. We want to be ready for tomorrow, pop up. But I want to let's start by inviting Toby to come on up. Toby Scruggs Hussein. And then Doug Stalnos from Chicago Public Schools. He's an SEL specialist there. You can have a seat here. Barnaby Spring, Director of Mindfulness and Education at New York City Department of Education. And James Butler, SEL Mindfulness Specialist at Austin Independent School District. He'll do our keynote and do a mentoring session for us tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you, gentlemen, for agreeing to talk with us tonight. And if y'all want to whip around, feel free, really informal, which is a lovely thing because there's a lot of formalities in the world. All right. So, Again, we have Doug from Network 13 of Chicago Public Schools, Barnaby Spring, New York DOE, and James Butler of Jane Butler Inc. SEL specialists in Dallas. Yes. Austin, thank you. Sorry about that. That's like San Francisco and Oakland. Okay. So we are going to open up if the group has any questions as well. I'm just going to start in with probably 2 or 3 questions just to get us going. And, we've written this wonderful book. 2 of you have published in it. Doug, your supervisors published in it. What kind of impact do you see this fabulous book having? I know it's been described as a field guide by Barnaby. I've seen it as a collection of best practices of practitioners in the field, and definitely can serve as a resource, both anecdotal and more firm, I guess, for lack of a better word. But what do you all see as the impact of this book having on the field of education in our community and mindfulness?
I think I wanted to go first. I honestly, personally, just jumping off, even I can't help but the optics of the panel right now I have to address. Yeah. And just to recognize, I know what it looks like and I'm feeling it. I'm here on behalf of. So I'm here on behalf of my boss, Dr. Watkins, who couldn't be here today. So I'm here in her stead, who was published in the book. And I'm going to do my best to represent her story of what we're doing in our area of Chicago with social emotional learning and mindfulness, humbly, because I'm doing my best to interpret the work we've been doing together through her words. But what I think the importance of the book is, at least from our perspective, is Chicago has such a negative connotation. It's almost a slur in other parts of the country or even other parts of the state. And I think that we're so proud of what we're doing in the schools in the far southeast side area of Chicago. Chicago, we work with schools in the Roseland, Pullman, West Pullman, southeast side, neighborhoods of Chicago, Oakdale Gardens. And we see amazing things in our schools every day. We see things that when principals prioritize it, when leaders prioritize it, when they can get their staff on board in a meaningful way to take some risks and to do some things that people sometimes say you can't do with students of color or aren't applicable to students of color, and they do it and they do it well and they see the benefits of it and they see amazing things happening in schools. I'm just really excited that there's an opportunity for people who will never step foot in any of our schools, who will never meet any of our kids, meet any of their parents, maybe get a different perception of what is possible when people really prioritize what they know is best for all students and do it with students who might not otherwise have a chance to benefit from as a result of it.
So, hello. First of all, Doug, thank you for stating the very obvious. And I would say, with regards to your question, Toby, like, I personally, as mindfulness specialist for the Austin School District, I am excited to use it as a resource for myself to help me in my role in implementing mindfulness in a large urban school district. And then just to be able to share it throughout the country is just like, just like you mentioned, anecdotes, stories, how is this happening, real life situations. I think that those are the most meaningful ways that we can share how to implement mindfulness, how to share mindfulness. That's been the most powerful way for me, anyways, in Austin, is to just share my personal story and how I came to mindfulness, and that alone is I'm just gonna say it's like it's more impactful than like teaching you like some mindful sit, to share the personal story of how this has impacted my life and how it's impacted everybody in the book, that's really, really powerful. So, you're great.
Yeah, I'm a straight white male in a white male supremacist culture. Definitely. No doubt about it. And I intend to use every single kind of entitlement and privilege I got to leverage the hell out of what's happening with this initiative. I know what my role is, and I am not afraid of the heavy lift. So, yep, it is what it is. The handbook for me is like I said, a field book. The book coming out because just right around the time it was coming out, I was asked to come to a very secretive kind of soiree on Central Park West. I was like, am I going to go meet the Illuminati or what? You know, and it was to hear a report from Jamie Bristow, who is leading the Mindfulness Initiative in England and Europe and other countries. And what they've been doing is, these are the people who've been behind mindfulness being implemented in schools throughout England as part of their curriculum, and also introducing mindfulness to parliaments, European parliaments. So if you even go to the website, the Mindfulness Initiative, there's a field book. It's called a Mindfulness Innovators Field Book. And I feel that's what this first book is. This book is charting out the territory. This book is laying out the incredible, like a cornucopia, the array of practices, the voices. And just the last thing, we are telling our stories. Also, we are describing best practices, but we're telling our stories. And Robert Coles was a mentor of mine. Dr. Robert Coles of Harvard University, who won the Pulitzer Prize for Children in Crisis, but he was also the man who worked with Ruby Bridges when she crossed the picket line and went to her first day of school. And Coles said to me that William Carlos Williams said to him that stories are critical. It's important that we listen to each other's stories about what we're doing. And that's the same thing that Christopher Emdin, who wrote that book that I keep on mentioning, For White Folks Teaching in the Hood, and all the rest of y'all too. Christopher Emdin asked just recently at a conference in New York City, please don't start your class with your curriculum or with your pedagogy or with your lesson plan. Start your class with a story. And we have started the story of the emergence of mindfulness in this country. And that is a powerful, seminal event.
Thank you so much for your words, gentlemen. Thank you. Barnaby, in your chapter 39, you wrote something that I thought was really interesting. I view us all, the chapter authors, the members of the coalition here of CASA, people who are attending, I see us really as a lot of the early practitioners in this work, the early adapters, the early believers, and some of us have a more extensive mindfulness practice long-term than others, and that's okay. There are also people put into place, I think, in a lot of our educational leadership roles in our districts and whatnot in the state that maybe just don't even have a practice at all. And so you wrote, we believed that it was our responsibility as central administrators to be champions, thought partners, and connectors to our schools wanting to deepen this work. So my question to you and the other members of the panel is, how does one really have the sense of responsibility if they don't practice or believe in the power of what it means to live mindfully and educate mindfully? And so what does that look like if you have to go to a higher up, if you will, to get that buy-in, or how does it look like for the people who are quote unquote higher up to provide that type of support when they may struggle to relate to what that looks like?
So how do you talk to people about mindfulness who don't have a mindfulness practice?
What does it look like for central leaders, central admin to support on the ground folks that do this work and value this work if they themselves don't have
Right. Well, that's what it looks like, is a little bit like green eggs and ham, like Dr. Seuss's book. And eventually you have to find a way. Sometimes you have to meet them where they are. They're in a stressful situation. They're serving the Western model of education, which primarily is responsible, in terms of what my uncle was writing about, is militarization, consumerism, and alienation. And if you're a high-level administrator in that kind of a model, you're in a hellish situation too. So one of the things you do is you show them how this mindfulness is dealing with some of the blocks that keep them from getting the kind of results that they want anyway. As far as I'm concerned, high test scores, credit accumulation, increased attendance rates, decreased suspension rates, kids not wanting to bully are byproducts of mindfulness. They're not even the aim of mindfulness, they're just byproducts. Like, that's going to happen. That's just going to happen like that. And the real thing that's going to happen with mindfulness is that human beings are going to become aware. And so the questions that I put to them are very democratic. I still have a right. Maybe it's my white privilege that makes me still think that I live in a democracy, right? And not a plutocracy that's edging towards authoritarianism. But I can still look at somebody and say, don't you think that a human being has a right to be aware? And that's something that they can identify with. And don't you think that you have a right to be aware? And when international magazines from around the world are coming in and telling stories about our own schools and about how they're implementing mindfulness programs, and you don't even know what the hell it is, how does that make you look? Let me do you a favor for your job. Let me not have you come in with the New York Times on the first day of school and walk into a mindfulness room and have the reporter from the Times ask you what's going on here, and you as a leader of the whole system, like, be scrambling to try to figure out what the hell is going on here. That literally happened. So sometimes it's just like, let me help you out here. And because the situation is dire, Sad to say, but the situation that we're in this country, it's like, okay, is this what it takes for you to pay attention? So I guess it's like that. Did I answer your question?
No, I think it's this.
I'm going to ask one last question, then we'll open it up to the audience here. So in terms of resilience, can you speak to how you've seen living mindfully, practicing mindfulness, support you in your own resilience and in the lives of our students in our systems as we're seeing them practice more and more and be able to utilize what it is that we're offering? So can you speak to how resilience has been cultivated for not only yourself through this work, but also through the students?
I came into mindfulness for this very reason. I was deep in the shit with depression and anxiety, and learned about mindfulness in therapy. And it is one of the things, I'm not going to say it's the thing, because I don't like mindfulness being called the thing about anything. But it is one of the things that saved my life and continues to save my life. And that in and of itself has been obviously really transformative for me. And honestly, I share, obviously not in great details, but I get vulnerable with teachers and staff in Austin and share about how this has really, really helped me deal with my own personal stuff, because I know that I'm not alone. As a teacher dealing with depression and anxiety, I'm not alone. So sharing that, and then I've had countless teachers come up to me afterwards and share about how, like, just hearing that is really impactful, and that they will, you know, that just that alone, it's not going to like give them this 10-year mindfulness practice, but like that's like the hook for them. And to me, that's the most important part. If we can get our teachers to be taking care of ourselves and taking care of themselves, like that passes down to the students. That directly passes down to the students. You know, like I'm all about using mindfulness in the classroom, but the most important part of mindfulness in schools is the educators themselves using mindfulness to take care of themselves so that their wounds aren't being taken out on the kids.
I think when I first heard the question, I really had to sit back a little bit, and I think I'm actually going to accept that question as a personal challenge, because I don't think I'm doing as well as that right now in terms of, I think, personally living mindfully, and I think that I've got a lot of examples from what I did when I was in a classroom role or a school-based role, when I talked to people, and what I implemented, how I implemented it, and how I modeled it personally. But what I don't think is I'm doing some of those same things as consistently as I was, or at least being able to relate it that way. So I really appreciate the question, because I think that I need some new anecdotes, and I need some new things and things to be able to tell people that that are relevant to right now. And I think that will help me, and maybe everybody could look at it that way. We've got to practice what we preach. And I got Mimi, hi. I got some great things from your session earlier today that I'm like, the next time I'm in front of a group of people, I had a great experience with a couple of your activities, and like all I was thinking was, I can't wait till I have a couple of groups of school leaders that I work with, and deans and counselors, and I can't wait to get in front of them again to say, I did this like a week ago, it was great, and let me try this with you guys, and again, keep it fresh. So thank you.
So, you know, I was sent to Father Flanagan's Boys Town when I was 10 after seeing my mother try to commit suicide in front of me, and that ended 10 years of my mother being in marriages with incredibly masculine, toxic men. What is it, masculine toxicity or something? Violent men, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. And then I went to Father Flanagan's Boys Town, where it was like a combination of Lord of the Flies and Little Lord Fauntleroy. And then I went to Cornell. It's like I came out of that and landed in Cornell. So resilience. I didn't discover what resilience and mindfulness meant until I started my first teaching job. I can't even call it a teaching job because I was learning. Until I began to show up on a regular basis for young girls, adolescent and adult women incarcerated on Rikers Island 5 days a week. And sat there, and I had just learned mindfulness myself, and I had been a struggling actor. When I got the job, I was living in a crack house in Hell's Kitchen. I wasn't doing crack, but I was living in the house. It was hard, and all of a sudden I had all these benefits. And here I am sitting with these young ladies exploding into my room, teachers freaking out in the other rooms, you know, screaming at the kids, and me, all I could think about was, damn, you mean I really get to go see a shrink? I really get these benefits? I get a regular paycheck? I was like, I felt like I hit lotto, you know. And the kids were exploding, and I was just learning mindfulness, and I was learning to stay, and I was learning to pay attention. And I was learning to not react. And I was beginning to see in not reacting that I had a lot of thoughts and opinions about who these human beings were in front of me. And all of a sudden they began to change in front of my eyes into little girls who've been criminalized, as opposed to what they were being labeled in those days, super predators. You know, and they were becoming, you know, wise women, you know, who, and so I was having the education. It was like cultural chemotherapy. And I was having this experience, but those kids were seeing me having that experience. See, the kids aren't stupid. They can tell when you're wearing a mask in the room and when you're not. And so they saw that I was authentic in the moment with them because I was authentically falling apart in front of them. And they thought, yeah, that's exactly how you should be. So I saw them looking at me, and all of a sudden we had a relationship of trust and confidence. I mean, it was off the hook. And that's what the resilience is. The relationship, the authentic relationship between a child and a human being who is not biologically the parent of that human being. That's what teachers do. And if they have a moment of authenticity, that's the medicine. That's the healing moment. And that's when I understood something about mindfulness and resilience.
Thank you. Thank you. And when we talk about resilience from earlier today and the caring, the skillful, caring adult, it's that authenticity that comes through, that authenticity of love, the agape kind of love, that just genuine care on a human level, and that vested interest. Thank you, gentlemen, for what you have shared. I'm going to save some of these questions because they're more equity driven, and it's an equity panel tomorrow. Of course, anything is fair game to ask these three up here. So if there's anyone sitting, enjoying their dessert and libations that would like to ask a question. You'll get to be on video. Right, audio. All right, thank you, Hector.
So thank you very much for sharing your heartfelt experiences and thoughts about the work. And one of the things that I see happening a lot, and Parker Palmer talks about this, and this is the work before the work. And he talked about that today earlier. So in your perspective, what is it we need to do as educators, as community people, in terms of that advanced work to make sure that the work is implemented properly and that it's sustained over time? You know, what's the missing link that seems to be sort of inhibiting the effective implementation and sustainability?
Does everyone understand the question?
Mindfulness and education.
Who would like to speak first? And all three don't have to answer, so just whoever feels compelled.
I think I got something. So, part of the conversation that I was having earlier today was that I think there's two things, and I think one of them has to do with some people think that once something is good enough, they don't need to build on it anymore. And I think that sometimes when we get an educator to a certain place or a whole school community to a certain place, they're not trying to put the icing on the cake anymore because they really did get over a hill and implement something, and they might see some sustainability, but because there are competing priorities, or because again they check the box off, or because something really is working on some level, they don't feel they need to build on it anymore. So I think that there does need to be a degree of personal challenge and a degree of saying, okay, here's something that we saw some traction with, and here's something that we're all really proud of, and what we've done. But I go back to what I said earlier. I do think that we need to keep it fresh. I think that we need to continue to look for more things that we can build off of what we do. I'm really huge on seeing what other people are doing in a big district. That's easy. I can say, I heard about this is going on at this school. I can call somebody up. Can I go to your school and see what's going on? And I can steal an idea very, very easily. I could bring people over there to see it in practice. It's great. So that's something that I think I would encourage people to do, as you have the opportunity to do as well. Visit other schools. Make connections here. If they're doing something, you're doing something good, they're doing something good, what you're doing can make them great. what they're doing can make you great, and I think new ideas really do energize people. So that's one part of that. I know that there's another aspect of it of a mindset shift that needs to occur, but I'll see if anybody else wants to tackle that.
That's exactly what I was thinking on.
We haven't met each other, not just.
That was good.
What's your name?
I'm done, by the way.
It's important to know somebody's name.
It is. Sorry, my hands are sweaty. I'm a little nervous. So I would say an enormous thing, like barrier that we're encountering is that we're expecting teachers to, at least when it comes to social and emotional learning and mindfulness, to embrace something that for the large majority, this is something brand new to their life. This is something brand new to the world of education, at least in American schools, and just giving permission. It is fascinating how many times I will do a mindfulness for self-care PD, and we're getting professional learning credit, and we are not supposed to talk about kids. We are just taking care of ourselves. We are just having conversations, and it just every single time, just the brain goes, ooh, I want to use this in my class, in morning meeting. Ooh, I want to use this in this transition. I've got this advisory. I'm and it's hard. You want to honor because as teachers, you can't just turn it off. You can't turn off being a teacher. But there is something to be said about how we are treating, or how the top-down emphasis on teachers to constantly be learning something about the classroom and improving your trade, and there hasn't been a hey, your job is hard as hell. Take care of yourself. That is completely abnormal, and it makes teachers cringe to think of well, no, but I gotta be doing something for you are. When you are taking care of yourself, you are taking care of your students. But that we need that kind of support from all the way up top, coming on down, and that's that is a huge mind shift. So just keeping practice, patience. That's what I have to keep telling myself. Just breathe, keep breathing.
I got a lot to say, but I don't want to take up too much airspace. You know us types, we like to get into a lot of mansplaining. So if you want my answer, we can talk later, but let's go on to the next question.
Thank you for those thoughtful responses. Thank you. Anyone else? Right. Tell me your name again. Jill. All right. Thank you. Jill from Newport Beach.
Yeah, that's really such a short part of my story. But I think the same thing with you being men, and such a short part of your story. And I think what I so appreciate of all of us is the authenticity. And when I see you as little boys. And I know that you didn't have the ability to express emotion and to be men today. That's what our boys today need. And you've done your work, and none of us really pick a skin, pick a color, but we're here, and that's our journey. And for that, I just, as a mom of 2 boys who have struggled being young men today, need role models like you. So, thank you.
This is a question for all of you, but also for Tovi. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I work in the public schools, and I have a concern about the way that mindfulness is often presented, especially in Title I schools and schools where they're primarily children of color, that this is sort of the solution to the problem of the school, that mindfulness is what will calm everybody down, and this is what you need. And I feel like Barnaby said earlier, like so strongly, that mindfulness is not about that. Like that might be a byproduct, but it's not what it's about. It's about making the children aware and free to feel their feelings and to be angry and to be outraged by what's going on in the world. And so I'm kind of curious to hear from people who are working in other school systems, like how is it being presented, and how can we be mindful of that message taking over?
Thank you. I will speak to that a little bit. People, it was almost like what James was naming, that, you know, we take this work and we think it's for the kids. How are we going to learn this for the kids? And it's so much about us doing it first, and about us knowing that we are co-learning and co-creating with the students, because there's no end point. So like no one's going to get a degree. I'm sure there's going to be a white college that will create a degree, but there's really no one's going to get a real degree in this. And so what I'm really naming as well, that I have seen start to happen, is that we start to do this to kids, and that we start to think this is for them, it's going to calm them down, and that takes away the authenticity of what we're about in this practice. And I love what you just named, you know, that the kids have rage. It's okay to be with their feelings. They're angry about the world. I'll never forget being on the campus of a high school of 1,600 students, most of whom are of color, my 85 teachers on staff, most of whom are not, and Trayvon Martin's murder. Not one teacher talked about it. All the kids were talking about it. All the kids wanted to talk about it. Not one teacher was able to have the capacity to have the connection, to have the conversation. They were so terrified that I, as the principal and as an African American woman, had to literally schedule an after-school talk with any of the kids that wanted to come, because it was creating such challenge throughout the day. Kids were acting out. Kids were getting enraged with the teachers who wouldn't allow for conversation. I mean, this is like what, you know, not authentic assessment, but bringing in real-world happenings into our curriculum can be about. And these are kids there that are the same age and fearful, and this can happen to them. And then there was the BART shooting as well in Oakland, and around the same time period, and I can't breathe. I mean, there was so much happening in the nucleus of where our school is, and the teachers couldn't hold it. So that to me is all the more reason. It's like, it's not about calming the kids down, it's about allowing us to all be able to be with difficult emotions, about us all to be able to be in the space. For me, it's more so about, can you stop writing 30 referrals a week? Like, what's that about? You know, that can't be your discipline plan. Somebody needs a sacred pause up around this camp. So what's really going on? And so, you know, even when we think about closing the achievement gap around what we're doing, I think the achievement gap is definitely could be closed within 2 years if we do some of the things that people have said work. People who have proven success with educating those who are not thriving and quote unquote creating the gap. We've got the tools, we've got the strength, we've got the knowledge, but we're not tapping into it. There's a lot of money to be made off of the achievement gap. A lot of it. And when I think about also the shame and blame that we have placed so much on white teachers, the shame and blame has become now, we're just going to defend mediocrity. We are going to defend mediocrity because we're getting mediocre results. And so we've just got to continue to do better. And I do think that this work of mindfulness and using it for implicit bias and explicit bias and just working on ourselves as the adults, we as the adults control the system. The kids simply come into it. And so it's really in our hands. It's really in our hands.
I would, thank you, Toby. I would add that thinking of schools that you described, that, you know, like, there's like, oh, we're going to bring in mindfulness to Title I schools with mostly students of color, and this is going to be the thing, and it ends up being harmful. And something that I, like, again, I know I keep stressing it, but like in Austin is an incredibly segregated school district and city, and I have put a lot of time and energy into the East Side schools. East Side schools in Austin are typically majority students of color, for the teachers, for that very reason, because I'm going to be real, this is my 4th year in my position, and the first couple years I would just, you know, had like mindfulness trainings, and then teachers would just be like, I just need mindfulness because I really need to get my students to be quiet. I really need them to just be quiet. I really need them to stop just like gathering up together. I really need them to be apart and to just sit in isolation. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, I got it. I messed up. I need to be very explicit about this. So I've started collaborating with the Cultural Proficiency and Inclusiveness Department, and isolating race is a part of like prerequisites to attend mindfulness trainings. And now we are having conversations about like, what is mindfulness? What is not mindfulness? Thinking about like ways to get kids to be quiet, and thinking about like, how can we, so if we're using mindfulness with staff, as Toby pointed out this morning, like the majority of teachers in America are white women. That does not represent the demographics of our student population. And so helping out our teachers to see themselves and to not get, I had the words, then they went away. It's not about what we need our students to do. It's about what can we do to help our students get what they need. And that's what mindfulness is all about, is that self-awareness for the teachers to pay attention to that, and educators. And when I say teachers, educators, I mean like everyone who directly or indirectly works with kids. So, yeah.
I would just quickly suggest that everybody see the film Resilience, which is a film about adverse childhood experiences, which I think for me gives me a big part of the why of this work, and that is that we are wounded. We are a wounded nation, and then we can think about the kids. We got to think about ourselves right now. You know, Vinnie Ferrara, in that film, May I Be Happy, says, you know, kids are not as armored up as we are. We have a lot more experience in abandoning ourselves than the kids do. You know, they haven't lived as long. They haven't learned how to fall into that automaticity that Ellen Langer talks about, which is like we're not here 95% of the time anyway. So there's that. And I think that I kept on thinking I trust the children. Kids, when kids know that somebody's, you know, when Megan Cowan is somebody that I've really come to respect, and she said something about when mindfulness comes into education, it's a risk. We're gonna, just like we have very ineffective teachers in all the subjects in education, we're gonna have very ineffective mindfulness teachers too. We're gonna have so-called mindfulness teachers who they have their eight-week program in their school, the program leaves, and in a week the teacher's banging on the singing bowl saying, shut the hell up, just practice mindfulness. You know, that's going to happen. There's going to be the apps, and the apps will come in, and teachers will say, listen to the app while I grade papers and stuff. There's going to be very highly ineffective teachers, and then there will be highly effective teachers. And that's the paradox of public education. That's a deeper conversation we all have to have with ourselves in this nation about the war against youth. and the war against public education, which is serious. And, I think it's going to be all right. I have incredible faith in kids, in youth. I mean, I do, man. We're acting like we're the ones who need to understand the kids. No, the kids are the ones that have to understand us.
No, I guess it's kind of all been said. I think the only thing that I want to add on to what everybody said is that some of the reason that people do see things this way in terms of mindfulness or social emotional learning being the bad kid off switch is that it was presented to them that way. And we do need to see that we might need to repair some of the harm that somebody else did to misrepresent something that isn't what was promised to them, right? Or was framed in the incorrect way. Because if that's what somebody feels like they needed personally, and somebody said that that's what they were going to give to them, and then it didn't work or it wasn't rolled out in a way that was ever going to work based on that, we need to recognize that that's where some people's perception is, and that's where they're locked right now, and confront that, because people are looking at it for a personal solution. How can I have a better day with my kids by having them be calm or be good, and not how can I help my kids reach potential? How can this benefit me? But again, if they're seeing things that way, it really might be because of how it was framed, and until we've got to deconstruct that a little bit. But I know that's how it did get presented, intentionally or unintentionally, in more than one place for sure.
Toby?
Yes. And unless there's a burning question, we'll wrap after Lori's comment or question.
I don't actually need that. I got to really
No.
Okay.
So I completely disagree. I worked in the inner city, Oakland, for 30 years. Never understood why kids of color weren't doing better because they were brilliant. 30 years. I worked in low-income schools in Oakland, California. The second I tripped over mindfulness when we brought it in, which ended up being Mindful Schools, everything changed. Everything changed. I've seen it again and again. It's not that kids are bad, it's that their nervous systems are a wreck. This calms down their nervous system so they can be the best they can be. We got an email from a principal in Killeen, Texas, on a military base. I get why their grades are going up. I get why their discipline's better. Why are they nicer to each other? This stuff works. And it's great when teachers, and obviously we have to do a lot of cultural compensating. We do have mostly white teachers, depending on where they're coming from and their own background. That's another issue. And yes, they have to be brought together. But I have never seen anything that's so important in social justice or educational equity. I'd like to retire, and I can't. Because my goal is every kid, preschool to grad school, with their teachers, learning with their teachers. If the teachers graded the paper, it's not going to work. But together they can do this. It is irresponsible to expect teachers to take an 8-week course and know what the hell they're doing. They don't. There are teachers that went through our early Mindful Schools courses, and I told this today in the Mindful Schools class, and I adore Mindful Schools, that there was a teacher who said that was it. She was done for the year. I mean, that was going to be it. She'd already taught 20 years. She was tired. She was in East Oakland, primarily Hispanic school. At the end of the school year, she was there, and she said it was because of mindfulness. 3 years later, we're trying to get a Gates grant. So I said to my colleagues, they're going to want to know what's happened with the early teachers. So I sort of tiptoed sheepishly into that school. Sure enough, she's there. Yes, this is a racist country. This is a tough place. There's economic problems. Mindfulness is not the only answer, but it's the closest thing I can find. And yes, let's work on racism. But the way to work on racism is through this, I think. Because truth comes out, kids thrive. There's a school in New Jersey, we got a video from a principal 2 days ago saying that they had started this, Title I, took a really long time because the teachers didn't really understand it. They happened to use InterExplore, which is a program I work with, teachers and kids practicing every day, 10 days, and that they decided to make it mandatory, which I didn't think was a good idea initially. Now I think it's imperative with all the suicide and the anxiety and they had the program for 3, they had fights, at least 10 gigantic fights a month. They haven't had a fight in 3 months. That's a good thing. Kids can learn. Kids come up to the principal and go, yo, Mr. Suro, how come we didn't do mindfulness today? They love this. And the teachers love this. It's irresponsible to ask teachers to be in control of this. So the questions we had when Mindful School started is who gets to teach this? And obviously I don't advocate that people don't have a mindfulness. You can't teach piano if you don't know piano. And the second thing is how do you spread it? Because everybody wants it. So I just want to say to everybody in this room, keep doing what you're doing. And this is the only curriculum that I know of that benefits rich kids that are trying to get in Harvard as much as the kid of a prostitute who deals with drugs every day. It's the same thing. Being present is the same, and it can be taught exactly the same way. That's just an opinion. I'm very opinionated.
Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to share or ask, contribute? Okay.
I'd just like to say I am excited about the possibility of this possibly growing and starting chapters and things like this, because I want to see more people that look like me in these conferences and to grow it that way. And so that I'm in Atlanta, and I have colleagues that are interested, and they may not have as supportive principals that will send them to conferences and things like that, but I'm planting seeds and hoping that in a few years this audience will look quite different.
Thank you. So last microphone public call, because there will be an after party. Sorry, viewers, you will miss the after party. We are going to just have a sit for us all as a formal close to the panel. So thank you, esteemed guests on our panel. Gentlemen, thank you for showing up for this. So thank you so much. We're going to do a closing sit that's in theme with our being our highest light self from this morning, in a sense. And then Tracy and I are going to stay after for sure and have conversation about any ideas or collaborations or any conversation, even starting chapters, whatever comes up organically. We're in the room till about 9 o'clock this evening having open conversation. If people are still enjoying, of course, having conversation here, feel free to stay in the room and talk about the things that are important to you and have meaning. So please don't feel like this is a goodbye. This is just a close for those people that are ready to say goodbye. So I'm going to invite you to take some deep breaths and work on our posture. And I really want to invite you to think about liminal space for yourself. I know we really shouldn't be thinking, but just to kind of be with that for a moment. And as we're sitting, you can just listen to the sound of my voice. I use a practice that I call emo sitting, which is sitting with emotion and trusting that our emotion helps to regulate not only our nervous system, but program our bodies on a cellular level. And that emotion floats around through all the liquid and hormones and liquids that float around in our bodies. And so what can that look like? And just noticing the sound of the fan, noticing the ventilation in the room. Perhaps sending some gratitude to yourself for showing up here for yourself, for others, for those that we serve. Embracing this work as our journey. As we embrace being in a healing space, a giving space, a thoughtful space. Perhaps take a moment to lightly open your eyes and look at the candle on the table. And then closing our eyes, holding on to the image of the flame as we listen and breathe.